Hello and happy Friday, and thanks for tuning into RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. And this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Mickey Duzyj. How'd I do with that?
Yeah, pretty good.
Oh, good. Mickey is one of these people who I had so much fun looking into. The rabbit hole of beautiful, creative things that came out of your mind is just spectacular and brilliant and really fun. And thank you for all the beauty you bring into the world.
Oh, what a great introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. So most of the stuff I'm referring to includes drawings by you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's illustrations and murals and stuff. But the stuff that's most fun, no surprise, is the illustrations that move, the animation. And I guess I'll just ask this, when was your first animation?
So I was interested in animation just as a fan when I was, really younger. My cousin, who was a pretty well-known graffiti artist in San Francisco, he wrote Jolt. He introduced me to all this like avant-garde animation when I was a teenager, like Ralph Bakshi and going to Spike and Mike animation festivals.
Fritz the Cat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was really into it, and that's what I wanted to do in college originally. But I made an animated film when I was about 17 years old. It had about 750 drawings in it. It took me months and months. And it like freaked me out, like the amount of work that goes into quality animation. So I decided I still want to go to art school, but I'm going to study illustration instead. And it wasn't until much later that I came back around to it.
A lot easier. And were you doing like 24 frames per second for these drawings?
I can't remember the frame rate, but it might have been like 10 or 15.
Right. It's still a shit ton of individual pieces of art.
Yeah. No, it was crazy. I was like hand painting cells, and
I was
it was
going to
insane.
ask.
Yeah.
So you'd have backgrounds, and then the cells would flip on them.
Yeah.
So 750. So that's how long would that piece have been?
Oh, it was like a 3-minute short or something.
And what was the subject matter?
Oh, it was something stupid. The short was called Airmail, and it was about a guy who lived in a tree house who was trying to get his mail, but was too lazy to climb down. So it involved a fishing rod and a postal mail carrier in a truck. It was really profound.
Yeah. And you still have it somewhere, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I have a VHS of it sitting in my basement.
I didn't come across that in my research. Is it up somewhere on YouTube?
No, I've never shared that.
How come?
I don't know. Nobody's ever asked.
Well, will you send me a link? I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I have to digitize it somehow. Yeah. I will.
Oh, right. Because it's actual film, or it's a VHS?
Yeah, it's a VHS. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't watched it in a while.
What a blast. So how old were you when your cousin was sending you like Fritz, the first X-rated cartoon?
I was like 16 and 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
And prior to that, had you been a fan of like, Chuck Jones and...
Sure, yeah. I think like Ren and Stimpy was probably a huge influence for me. Yeah. I mean, I was as into cartoons as kids were. I didn't grow up in a particularly culture-filled household where my parents or aunts and uncles were introducing me to art, so I was kind of catching it through mass media.
Right. And what was your household filled with?
Degradation and despair. No.
Good. Go on. Perfect.
No, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a pretty tense environment that I don't look back on with a lot of fondness. I was a little bit of a black sheep in my family for being interested in the arts and loving to be creative and draw. That was something that my parents, especially my dad, had a really hard time with. I wasn't the kind of kid that he maybe knew how to interface with. I wasn't the kind of kid that he dreamed of. So I feel like being imaginative for a long time was not only my interest, but like also a coping mechanism to help me deal with kind of feeling like I was living in the wrong house or something like that.
Right. Huh. And your mom was not much help either.
No, mom was great. And
Are they still with us?
Yes, yes. Mom was great, and she would send me to art classes. And I do think that one of the things that I remember her doing is that my parents would always be volunteering for different community things or get involved in the school. And a big fundraiser at my elementary school was a Las Vegas night. So they would do like flyering for that. And so my mom would, every year that they'd be doing the Las Vegas night, she would get a ream of these flyers, and she would just, slip me an extra ream. And that was my drawing paper for the year,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So props
sweet.
to my mom for doing that.
And what were your favorite materials to use for drawing? Did you have colored pencils or,
It was mostly markers because I was really trying to just copy cartoons, either from the newspaper or from TV.
Uh-huh.
So all the drawings. And another thing that my mom did is that she kept all of my drawings from, I have my first drawing from when I was, 18 months old. So,
Oh, wow.
So I have a nice binder of those, and most of them are either pencil or marker drawings.
And have those been digitized somewhere?
I mean, I have them. Sometimes I share them on social media, not often, but I have them, and I've shown them to my boys.
Right. That's so sweet. And what do your boys think?
I actually think that they have a talent in drawing as well. So this was, for a long time, we did the analog thing at our house where we were all drawing together, and it was. Gosh, I mean, for anybody who grew up drawing to then draw with your kids, it's hard to describe. It's such a great thing.
Right. That sounds great. So back to your household growing up, what pursuit would have made both of your parents happy? It wasn't being artsy.
So my family came to live in Detroit because my family's Ukrainian. They were refugees after World War II. They came to Detroit. Many of them didn't speak English, and they worked in factories. So, my dad, he ran a tool and die shop. My uncle was a mechanic. So very, hands-on, making things with machines, laborers. I got the feeling that to be a creative person was like, I don't know, not something that someone of our was what our family was kind of in line for. Even though I should say that being a Ukrainian, there is a great history as far as like Slavic people go. Ukrainians in particular have this very, very rich cultural history that includes visual art, but more famously includes painted eggs and embroidery and wood carving, all of these great arts that, being in the diaspora in a Ukrainian diaspora in Detroit, I was exposed to, and everybody loved and appreciated it. But for some reason, the idea of pursuing that professionally seemed like, I don't know, some kind of impossible dream.
Right. Are you still connected somehow to the Ukrainian diaspora?
In some way, yeah. Not through. I used to do a lot of things. Like I was part of the Plast Ukrainian Scouting Organization. I was in a Ukrainian dance ensemble for many years called the Echoes of Ukraine. Shout out Echoes of Ukraine.
Oh, nice.
But these days, most of what I do is some fundraising for the war effort.
Right.
You might see for people in Rhinebeck, I'm going to do a new fundraiser called Slavapalooza come through. I'll give you more information when we get it together.
I like the title.
Thank you. But other than that, no, just being a proud Ukrainian and proud of all of my distant relatives out fighting for their existence.
Right.
In the homeland.
So many people all around the world doing the same thing.
Yep.
Oof. So do you come across in your daily life other Ukrainians and sort of spot each other and like, have a smile or a word?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I wear like year round since the war has started, 3 years ago. I wear an armband with
I saw that on your way in.
the Ukrainian flag. So, we acknowledge one another, and there are actually a lot of Ukrainians in upstate New York. So,
Right.
it's always great to get stopped and to meet other Ukrainians, see what they're doing.
Right. That's fabulous. And have you done art about what's happening over there?
No, I haven't. No, for some reason, a number of years ago, this was before I don't know if I should even talk about this, but I was approached to do a documentary because I sometimes direct documentaries now. I was approached to do a documentary on Zelensky.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, he was a new president, and I wasn't sure what the story was going to be. I wasn't sure if I was the perfect fit for it, but I really hope that somebody else took that gig and is making an incredible film about him, because he is an all-time great hero. But for me in particular, I've not really done it yet. No.
And why did you think maybe you weren't the person to do that?
I can't really remember why. I don't know. I say no to probably 19 out of 20 things that come to me. So, I waited, talked to some of my collaborators, because, making a film is a team sport, and I just decided not to do it.
Now, you said you say no to 19 out of 20 things that come to you, but lots of the things that I saw that you did, I imagined coming from you rather than sort of a client, or funder bringing them to you. What percentage of your output is somebody brought it to you and said, hey, can you do this, versus you saying, I want to do this, can you fund it?
Yeah. So it's hard to put an exact percentage on it, but I would say that as time has gone on, I've done a lot more work that is self-initiated, that my curiosity kind of brings me to want to develop it, do some pre-interviews to put it together, and then go out to try and fundraise. For films, it takes millions of dollars to, do some of the things on the scale that I want to do them. So, it depends. It depends what I'm working on. I still do a lot of advertising work. I know that was a world that you worked in for a long time. I do, commercial work, still illustrate sometimes, but many of the things that I want to do take time and take money to develop. So the commercial work that comes into me helps to fund some of the work that I want to develop and bring out to potential investors. So it's always a mix of those two.
Right. It used to always be a lot more lucrative, the commercial work, than sort of the artistic work or the editorial work.
I feel like I've really lived kind of a charmed creative life, where I've been able to get projects funded that are very strange in nature and do not immediately set the algorithms, afire.
Right.
So that's been something I'm really, really proud of. Obviously, hope it continues.
I'm knocking on wood for you.
Thank you.
So of all these projects, self-initiated projects that got funded, which one did you think was the biggest long shot? And when somebody wrote you a check, you're like, what the fuck? I can't believe anybody's funding this.
Well, I can tell you about the first one, which is that, I kind of became a director by accident. I went to art school to be an illustrator and, worked as a commercial illustrator for magazines and newspapers for the first decade of my career. And then I got this real storytelling bug where, this goes back to what you were just saying, this kind of self-initiated versus ideas coming in. I had a lot of stories that I wanted to tell. So I started to do these written and illustrated blog posts, first for my own website, but then I started to do them for ESPN. And one of the blog posts that I pitched while I was doing them for ESPN was this story about how this 56-year-old IT guy who's very, very into miniature golf, putt-putt golf, he had the day of his life a few years prior and scored a perfect game, 18 hole-in-ones in a row. And I wanted to do that story and to interview everybody that was there that day. So I pitched it as an Illustrator blog post. And, ESPN, they not only have a website, they have like a YouTube channel. It's a whole multimedia conglomerate. One of the editors there said, we love this story so much. Would you consider, instead of doing it for, $1,000 for the website, for doing it for a much bigger budget and doing it as a short film? I had been starting to do some animation at that point. This editor knew my animation, and he said, why don't you give that a try? Would you consider it? So I said yes, and that was my first film, aside from Airmail, which we talked about. That was my first documentary that I directed. It's called The Perfect 18.
Right, and I saw that, and it's really wonderful.
Oh,
it's
thanks.
one of those things like, and this is a magical kind of film or documentary where what's going to happen. It's in the title, it's in the description of the piece. You're still sitting on the edge of your seat as you're watching it transpire, which is a pretty neat trick. But it's a great piece. The Perfect 18. People can find that on YouTube.
Yeah, if you search for it, actually, I think my link is up on Vimeo. But if you just search for The Perfect 18, you'll find it.
And what's your website?
GrandReveal.com.
Grand Reveal.
Yeah, that's my production company.
Okay, but then there's also Mickey Duzyj website.
Yeah, so I do a number of different things. I have my own studio, and then I have the commercial side of my business. People know me by my name, so it's just my personal website with my commercial work on it.
Right, but Grand Reveal is mostly
film and animation.
Okay, but documentaries and commercial work.
Yeah, some commercial animation.
Okay, and what are you working on now?
So I have a couple things. I have 2 feature films that one is completely done, feature documentaries. One is nearly done. That I can't exactly say what they are because they were the production company has funded them and they're looking for a buyer. It's like a little bit of a tricky time in the documentary space. I'm hopefully going to be able to share those things within the year, but we'll see. And I'm writing a new big thing, which I'm excited about, that has something to do with this teenage memoir thing that I wrote last year.
What's the teenage memoir thing?
Oh, it's called Goth Tennis. That's kind of my personal memoir of the year in high school that I spent when I was a pot-smoking goth tennis champion.
Yeah. and took your team to states.
Yeah.
And you were, and you described in one scene, you describe it's a hot day. You're playing the really rich team, Grosse Pointe, or
Grosse Pointe North. Yeah.
And you had dyed your hair black because you wanted to be more goth. And like the hair dye coming out on your shirt as you were struggling to close out the set.
Yeah.
Against your opponent, and from this really, how did you say it? Like the whitest, wealthiest tennis, country club tennis team.
That's right.
In Detroit.
Yeah.
So that must have been kind of amazing to be this kind of a person appearing and playing that kind of a game.
Yeah, I think that's, I had never really thought that memoir was something I ever wanted to pursue. But I became very close with, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent of the origin of this thing, but, I was convinced by the editor of Racket magazine that published this story that actually the contrast between kind of who I was and what I was dealing with, juxtaposed with the sport of tennis, was something that, I don't know, people would find entertaining or something that they would relate to. So, this is why I dove into write and share that story. But I think that actually, even though that took place, I mean, we're talking 1998, so this is, over 20 years ago, 25 years ago. like it took that long for me to really process, I think, what was happening in my teenage years, some of which were complicated by, the house that I mentioned that I grew up in. So I don't even think that if I had tried to do this kind of personal writing before, I kind of become this middle-aged guy, I could have even been able to do it.
All right, now I got a bunch more questions. Did the house celebrate your success on the tennis courts?
My house?
The house you grew up in, yeah.
My sisters also played tennis. My parents didn't come to watch me play.
Okay. My second question was going to be, you said you processed it, all these years later. Was there much therapy involved between then and having successfully processed this?
Sure. Yeah, no, totally. I think the biggest thing for me, and this is something that the story speaks to as well, is that I was a really angry young person, and I didn't feel like I had dreams. I didn't feel like I had a future. And that anger, which was very present for me and alienating, was masking just a complete lack of self-esteem and a feeling of agency that, I could do something with my life. I think that's probably why I didn't have any dreams. So once I, got a little bit older, I was still pretty angry in my 20s, but after I got a little bit older and got into some therapy, started to realize how these things connected to one another. And also something that's in the story, I'm sorry I'm talking about this story that a lot of people probably haven't read, is that...
My listeners don't read.
Okay, well, I'll tell you that for me, a big draw of the sport of tennis in that time was the physical pain that I felt and that I felt like the game could inflict on my opponents. And what I've now come to process is that I craved that physical pain because that drowns emotional and psychological pain. In the same way, there are many.
Go on.
You hear of young people cutting themselves.
Right.
And I think that what I was doing served a similar psychological need, which was to dissipate this hall of mirrors, this psychological torture that I felt like I was trapped in.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about all that.
It's a feel-good story. I like to think that there was some humor in there, but
the Goth Tennis
the soul of it.
Story has plenty of humor and levity in it. But now talking with you, one of the things you talk about in there is your coach, Larry.
Yeah.
And this guy, and now talking with you right now, light bulb went on. I'm like, was he a little bit sort of the father that you weren't getting, supportive and cheering you on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what I found in this coach was an unconditional love.
Right.
And an acceptance of meeting me where I was, even if where I was as a teenager was a very fluid situation. I didn't have a defined identity. I was trying on, literally wearing all of this stuff and dyeing my hair. But he accepted me, and he invested time and effort and attention in me. And that was an incredible gift that changed my life.
I love that. And one of the stories in there, and I recommend everybody go find this story, Goth Tennis. It's a great story. It's got I love the ending. I don't want to ruin that for anybody. But one of the vignettes I really liked was, I guess, over the winter, the school year, you became more and more goth in appearance and hair and accoutrements. And when the tennis season opened, you said as soon as the temperature hit 40 degrees, you showed up and not knowing what Larry was going to say about this new person.
Yeah.
And he shook your hand and he looked down and he said, some of these rings might chafe or something.
Yeah, I might get calluses.
Yeah.
Because I was, wearing, 3 or 4 rings on my swinging hand.
With skulls on them?
Yeah. So he said, you can wear whatever you want, and that's all fine. But there might be some practical challenges in some of this gear.
I love that so much.
Yeah. No, but that's kind of what I'm saying about man, it's not like he was taking time to be like, well, what is behind all this and everything, but just meeting me where I was. And I think that
super nice.
it's really, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm still processing it, but to your original question of was he a father figure in some way, a surrogate parent, I definitely knew even then that what I was getting from him was something that I was starving for.
Right.
And Larry was the kind of coach, and there are many levels to this, where one of his talents as a coach is that he could sense the hunger of a player, of a young person in front of him. And when he sensed that hunger, be it to become a better player, to be someone who is accepted, he would give that player all they could eat. And that's what he did for me.
Right. Spectacular.
And getting to become a champion in tennis when I was a husk, an emaciated husk of a human being.
How much did you weigh?
I can't even really remember. Maybe 120, 125.
And how tall?
6'2". I was a skeleton.
So that is an emaciated husk.
Yeah.
Just amazing. So now you're working on an expanded version of Goth Tennis?
Yeah, I don't want to, I don't love to talk about things that I'm working on, but it's related to it. And I'm writing more. Goth Tennis was really not only the first memoir that I wrote, but largely besides pitch documents and things that I do for selling films. It's really the first time that I sat down to really write something recently. So, being that these are colder months and we're holed up inside, I've been really enjoying doing more writing. It's been really gratifying.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And when you write, are you writing sort of like dialogue and scene descriptions, and you're just writing the movie?
Yeah, just really trying to, try to be imaginative. I'm such a visual person. When I was originally working on Goth Tennis, the idea of sitting with a blank page in front of me, just filling a page with words, didn't feel like a native language to me. So what I started doing was just filling sketchbooks with little thumbnails of images from that time, things that I remember in my memory. And I was listening to a lot of the music that I listened to from back then. So I was just steeping myself in as much of that stuff as possible. And I found, actually through writing and dictating that some of these scenes would come to life and some dialogue would come together. And it was, I don't know, it's like a new art form for me. So it's exciting.
I love that. And what is the music you were listening to back then?
Well, the big band for me in those days was the Sisters of Mercy. Big, famous goth band from England. But Susie and the Banshees, Bauhaus, a lot of the OG goth music that my friends turned me on to.
And were you ever in a band?
No, I'm not musical whatsoever, aside from liking it.
And you said you don't really enjoy talking about things you're currently working on.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I feel like in especially the film world, a lot of people talk a lot of shit about things that they're doing. And how
do you mean talk a lot of shit?
Well, they're saying that they're, I'm thinking about doing this thing. They're not actually doing it. I prefer to, the truth is that I am always collecting piles of string on any number of things for film projects, written projects, illustrated things, animated things. Oftentimes those things take a while to develop and come out into the world. And sometimes if I talk about it too early, it creates this expectation that I should push it out before it's ready. So I prefer not to do that too much.
Interesting. Fair enough. Yeah, I know lots of creative people who feel that way.
Oh, yeah.
They feel like, well, if I talk about it, and it sort of becomes real, and I'm less incentivized to do it.
Yeah, I think that's fake. That's a trap.
I talk about shit all, okay. If you're going to listen, I'll tell you everything I'm working on. So I'm the opposite of that.
Just my
but
preference,
I totally respect that.
Yeah.
So what's the timeline for this thing? Can you discuss that?
Well, this is kind of goes back to when you were asking, well, what percentage of your time are self-initiated projects versus things that come in? Especially doing something that, I don't have a defined process, trusted process.
Right.
I have to let things kind of evolve organically and give them the time that they need.
Plus, when ESPN calls, you got to drop everything.
For I guess we all have like our price or whatever that we'll do that for. But it's always a calculation where I'm carving out time for personal things versus I do like to do commercial work. Even a lot of the good work that I've done. I even do a lot of murals for professional sports teams.
Right. I loved your Rangers murals.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, to see a mural installed in Madison Square Garden, like as a lifelong sports fan, that's a thrill,
Right.
So on one hand, I could be like, oh, this is like a drag. I'm, working for the man or whatever. But on the other hand, like I still do get a kick. I love working with and for clients. I'm a pretty enthusiastic collaborator and have gotten to work with a lot of really talented people. So it's always a mixed bag, and I love to juggle it all.
Right. So one of your, I'm guessing, more successful in terms of like sort of people seeing it.
Yep.
Pieces is probably Losers, which Netflix currently has.
Yep.
And how did that come to be? And can you describe for people what it is and how it came to be?
Yeah. So Losers is an 8-part documentary series that I created and directed for Netflix. It came out, I think at this point, about 5 years ago. And, each of the 8 episodes tells a different story from the world of sports. And the premise of the series is that athletes or teams who have gone through a very public and humiliating defeat, for them, they all have this shared experience where, number one, the world labels them a loser, a quote-unquote loser, for failing so publicly. Whether or not that was like totally their fault is kind of beyond the point. So they get this label. And number two, after they suffer this loss, all of the cameras and the attention of the world turns away from them very, very suddenly. So I made a film, at this point it was about 10 years ago, with ESPN, who funded my first short films. I made a film called The Shining Star of Losers Everywhere, which is a short documentary about a Japanese racehorse that became famous in Japan for enduring a losing streak of epic proportion. And
how many races in a row?
I think it's 115 races that she competed in, and she got second place, a half dozen times, but never really came close to winning. The story was interesting because Japan was in the depths of a recession. People were really at the people were getting laid off all over. They were looking for a symbol of hope. And this racehorse, after there was a beautiful article written about her, she became known as this patron saint of endurance in the country. And people would come to, southwestern Japan to this racetrack to watch her compete. They would come from all over the country. So I read this story. I thought, man, this is something that could not have happened in America.
Where'd you read the story?
I read it in The Guardian when I was in art school, actually. It happened, this was in 2004. I was still in college at the time.
And that's SVA?
I was SVA, yeah.
Why are you reading The Guardian at SVA?
So...
Are you dating an English girl?
No. I'll say this quickly. One of the great cosmic pieces of good fortune in my life is that I went to SVA at the time when this artist named Thomas Woodruff took over the illustration program.
Love Thomas Woodruff.
You know him?
Yeah, I met him once.
Okay. So
the Apple Cannon?
Yes.
Fucking for one of my favorite pieces of art ever.
Okay, so we share a love for Tom. So for people that don't know Thomas Woodruff, he's had a really, really successful personal career that has really been hard to define, in that he has a long gallery career, has been collected by many museums, but also had a really robust commercial career where he was working for, all the top magazines, doing ads, working for Saturday Night Live and doing all sorts of things. Also is a huge proponent of the theater and has worked in theater, designing backgrounds and costumes. So he's someone who has a rich experience, but also he has like this rich multicultural approach to the way that he exists as an artist. So I came into SVA in 2000, and at that same time, he took over the chairmanship of the illustration department and quickly revamped the entire thing to take this multicultural approach. Multicultural is probably not the right word, but it's kind of weaving like a more dynamic cultural education into a commercial art program. So we were all encouraged not only to just go to museums and to go to shows that exist in New York City, but to learn and read about the theater, to read art criticism. One of my favorite professors was the art critic Linda Yablonsky. I had avant-garde gallery artists who were my foundation teachers. So he really instilled in all of us, and again, this was a great gift to me, to be curious about, to be curious about film, to be curious about books and comics, and how all of those things can really influence who we are as creators. So I was reading news, like wider. I was reading a much wider range of news and sources than one might expect a commercial illustration student to be reading.
Right.
And so I was collecting things. This was before I had even an outlet to do any kind of storytelling, but there was something about that I found really compelling. And as I mentioned to you before about collecting piles of string,
right,
I printed it out and I had it in a drawer for about 15 years.
That's so good. You know that Jim Jarmusch quote on authenticity versus originality?
No, hit me with that.
I'm sure I can't do it. It's a paragraph. The basic idea is there's no such thing as originality, but what you should do is go out in the world and steal from everywhere. Don't try to hide your thievery. Devour old movies and, foreign newspapers, everything you find, devour it and bring it in. And then when you make your art and it calls on all of these resources, these previously existing sources, what you will have is something that's very authentic to you. And he ends with a great quote from Jean-Luc Godard, who says, always remember, it's not where you take things from, it's where you take them to.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that what, Tom's approach did for me was that I always felt that I was kind of uncomfortably sensitive, and I was taking in a lot of things, negative things that obviously complicated my teenage life. But when I got to New York, suddenly to have someone like Tom who was really taking my hand and introducing me to cultural education, all of a sudden that sensitivity turned me into a great enjoyer of things.
Right.
And so, yeah, I was able to collect all of these things. I still, like I said, I still do that.
So when was the first time you remember meeting somebody else who was as uncomfortably sensitive as you? If ever.
Okay, so I recently reconnected with a man who I mentioned to you, like, that when I was a young person, weren't a lot of artists around. It was kind of a little bit of a cultural desert growing up in the suburbs of Detroit. Well, my parents organized this thing where I would get art lessons when I was 8 years old on the weekend from someone that they knew through their church. a man named Roman Petrashchuk, and he lived downtown Detroit, and he would give me pastel drawing lessons. And it was the first time I was ever asked to sit and try and do observational life drawing.
Right.
Because previously, like I said, I was drawing cartoons and comics. He
And
said
was it your first exposure to pastels?
pastel and charcoal.
Right.
So he sat
Which
me
is a
down.
whole different sumptuous medium.
Totally. Very, very perceptive of you. So I'm sitting with him and I'm doing these drawings, and like we were talking about with regards to Larry earlier, this older guy, Roman, and he was about 35 years old at the time, he really took time with me, and I remember sitting in his garden and drawing flowers. We went to the local park. We were drawing a sunset with pastels. And I just remember those being some of the most peaceful, beautiful moments of my childhood, probably because they stood in such contrast with the turbulence that I was dealing with at home.
Right.
And so I feel like, he was someone. So I just had these lessons for that summer, and then really I didn't see Roman that often.
Right.
After that, I reconnected with him during the pandemic. He now lives in Lakeland, Florida, and I got the number through the Ukrainian community, hunted him down, and I reached out to him and I said to him, because during the pandemic, my former coach Larry, he passed away, and I was thinking a lot about all of these people who had invested in me as a young person.
Right.
Who had taken this time and really, just gave me time and space.
Love that.
So anyway, I found him, I reached out to him, and I reached out to him, I called him, and I just said, Roman, we haven't talked since I was 8 years old. I just want to tell you how beautiful those lessons were. And he said, and I told him a little bit more. This was before I wrote Goth Tennis, where I spilled the beans on like what I was really dealing with at home. But I told him, I said, at the time, of course, as an 8-year-old, I didn't have the language to talk about what was going on at home. Literally, obviously couldn't even process it. But I was going through a really, really difficult situation at home. And he said to me, I might not have known that, but I also was ruthlessly bullied by my older brother. And probably subconsciously, I saw in you something of myself.
Oh, that is so fucking gorgeous.
Yes.
So that connection happened 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Have you made that into art?
It's one of the things I'm working on, actually.
Okay.
Because another twist on that story is that even though I was, having this beautiful moment with him at his house in downtown Detroit, he actually also said that time in his life was a time that was probably the darkest period of his entire life.
Right.
He was actually a drug addict and,
Oof.
Was working at this, in this brutal, porno theater where people were getting, killed in front of him. It was really...
Hey, Gads.
Really rough, yeah.
So spending an hour or two in the garden painting peonies with you was probably...
Yeah, so we were there for each other in some way that I'm unwinding. But I actually saw Roman. I just went down to see him for the first time since I was a child. I went down to Lakeland, Florida just a month ago, and he and I reconnected.
And did you film him?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And I asked that because most of your documentaries are a combination of, live film that you shot and animation. Mm-hmm. And so I just wondered if there was going to be some film of Roman in one of these pieces.
It could happen. It's, like I said, one of the many things I'm, developing.
Is he still drawing?
He is. Yeah.
Right.
I want him to draw more. Roman, if you're listening, you got to finish those pieces.
Do you think he might be? Are you all Facebook friends or Instagram friends or anything like that?
We're texting buddies. I love any, older person that's like really into texting.
Right.
Well,
we're texting I'm right
buddies.
here.
Okay, we could be texting buddies too.
That's good.
Yeah.
So one of the things that just kills me listening to this story is the role of art and beauty in people's lives and what it can do to calm the battered soul and help people to meditate on things and advance in their thinking. And you must be aware that your art does that for people other than you.
Sure, yes. This is something that I've come to understand, not just about... Well, it's something that I've come to understand about the stories that I'm drawn to and the way that I tell them. I would say that, sitting here and like giving you an artist statement, is kind of lame. I don't want to over-explain things, but an idea that I seem to be very invested in, which maybe stands in contrast or makes sense given the personal story that I've told you, is that I really actually believe that there is a hidden beauty that is hiding in plain sight all the time.
Right.
I really think that that's true. And I think that those of us who have honed our crafts in the same way that, this might seem like a strange analogy, but like a comedian can take any subject matter and give it a charm and a resonance and a beauty. I feel like this is what we can do. And I think my sensitivity, is kind of a divining rod towards some things that I feel have some kind of vibration. And I spend time, and I have found that as I spend time with subject matter, usually these very unexpected and beautiful things surface.
Right.
But I don't go in thinking like, oh, I want to make beauty or spend my time making. I don't know. It happens. I don't know.
You don't think you want to make beauty because your stuff's just gorgeous in its way. I mean, you must be aware that you're trying to make something that resonates.
Well, sure. I want things to resonate with others in the way that it resonates with me. But
and let me just interrupt. I think that's a great job for artists to help people see the beauty that's right in front of them that they might not have seen before. I think that, as you said, that's a great role for the uncomfortably sensitive in the world to help others with.
So, just to reference a couple things that we already talked about, the idea of these, older guys, these senior citizens who are really, really into playing miniature golf every weekend,
right,
competitively. To tell that story where all of them tell the story of that day like it was a religious experience, like it's the most important day of their life, hopefully dignifies and elevates this thing that's really, really important to them.
Right.
Whereas if you just showed up or you're driving by that day, you would probably be very dismissive looking at this group of, sad guys or whatever. And the same thing with the Japanese racehorse. The story that I read, the original story that I read in The Guardian, was very dismissive of this story as being yet another bizarre Japanese pop culture phenomenon.
Right.
But when I looked at the photo that they ran with the story, I could see in the crowd, older people, younger people, just really different. And I was like, this doesn't just seem like something that is a teenage fad or something. I think that there's more here.
Right.
So, I think that, my curiosity leads to, this enjoyment. I don't know.
All right, let's go back to the horse. You set the stage. Japan was in the midst of a protracted and uncomfortable recession.
Yeah.
And here's this horse who had lost like 130, 140, 150 races in a row.
Yeah.
And maybe came in second, but never ever won. And became an icon of a poster child for perseverance.
Yep.
Amongst the populace who really was ready for that. And so you saw this story and you decided to do a short documentary on it.
Yeah. So this was like the early this was my second film. So I had made the putt-putt film, but, I pitched that story to ESPN. I'll say this, I'll be honest about this now, but at the time it was pretty amateur hour that I pitched the story and sold the story to ESPN before I even reached out to the principal subjects. Okay, so I sold the story, and then they were like, "Okay, yeah, go to Japan and make this documentary."
What a dream! How old were you?
I don't know. I was mid-late 20s.
Right.
Something. Yeah.
So what a fucking dream for a kid.
Well, it was cool until I reached out. I got a Japanese producer to work with me to reach out to the subjects, and they all told me, they said, thanks so much for reaching out, but I guess you didn't come across this news bit that all of us at the track, we feel really burned by the fact that this racehorse was basically abducted and taken away from us, that collectively we've all decided that we're never going to talk about this story ever again. Thanks. Goodbye.
Oh my God, that's not in your documentary.
No.
That's a great little sideline.
So I started to the spiritual center of that film is this man named Muneshi, who is the trainer of the racehorse, whose name is Haru Urara. And Muneshi is the one who, despite the fact that she was losing all these races, he said, most horses that are this unsuccessful, they basically get executed. I'm going to keep this horse alive.
Glue factory is what she said. Yeah.
Yeah. So he decided to keep her alive, and he said, as long as she's racing as hard as she can, I'm going to stick with her. So I wrote a letter to Muneshi, and I did a drawing for him. I told him why I was compelled to share this story with an American audience. And I feel like I've said this already before tonight, which is that sometimes in my life there have been these kind of cosmic moments of good fortune. That same summer that I wrote to Muneshi, the same time that he's getting this letter from me, Haru Urara was discovered to be alive at a farm just outside Tokyo, which is hundreds of miles away from Kochi, where the racetrack her home racetrack was.
Right.
So Muneshi, between my letter and artwork that I sent him and the fact that Haru Urara was discovered to be alive, and he flew to Tokyo to go meet her and to confirm that was her.
To be reunited with this horse.
Yeah. He thought this is too weird of a coincidence, and he convinced everyone at the track to change their longstanding policy of not talking about it. They invited us to come to Japan, and I made the film.
And it is such a beautiful film. And you just brought that up in answering how Losers came to be.
Yes. So I made that film, and this was a great, not just great artistic experience for me, but a great life experience. I got to make this film. It premiered at Sundance, it played at festivals around the world. I was able to bring the film back to Japan. We played it in a couple different places in Japan, including at the actual racetrack.
Right. Which was like a mid-tier, sort of like medium-sized city racetrack.
Oh, that's generous. I mean, it's real lowbrow,
Gotcha.
Very entry level, let's say.
Gotcha.
So I was able to take this film around, and was in a few different countries, and the discussions that we had around these themes of failure and loss and how different cultures process that.
Right.
I just thought this was such a rich, unexplored area, and it gave me this idea to do an international survey of failure. And that just so happened to really mirror or gel with what Netflix was looking to do at the time, given that they're in 188 countries. This international survey and the fact that they were sports documentaries, that really appealed to them. So they greenlit the series, and traveled from the Moroccan desert to Alaska, France, Italy. Like we
Right.
really cast a wide net. And
you said there's 8 of them?
yeah, 8 episodes.
Now, I only saw 3, and they seemed to be much less about failure than perseverance or pivoting.
Totally. The subjects that I chose because I really admired the way that they handled failure. In
Right.
each of the stories, we tell the story of this public failure that they endured. But the second arc of each of the stories is when the cameras went away, what kind of post-traumatic healing happened and growth. And really, really interesting things happened in those moments, including across many of the stories, counterintuitively, that very public failure and humiliation actually resulted in the subjects' hearts growing larger,
Right.
and having a greater empathy for the people around them. So I didn't expect that to be the case.
Right.
But one of the great things about being a documentarian is now that I have these people that I admire so much as kind of a part of my life. I've stayed in contact with these people. So it's, funny story. So we were nominated for a couple of Emmys for that show, and we didn't win. And the very first people that reached out to me after we didn't win the Emmys that night were my subjects. And they said, full circle.
Love that.
This was meant to be.
Right. That's so sweet.
I
love that. Did you save their missives? Did you save the text or emails?
Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'll
what
share
a
some
great
with you.
collection of stuff.
Yeah.
And one of them talking to you now, the one about the boxer.
Yeah, Michael Benn.
Who became the heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah.
Which no small feat. And then, and I won't share too much. And then through a series of sort of events, made a smart decision to pivot to other stuff. Became very happy. His relationship with his dad seemed very much like what you're describing your relationship with your dad.
Yeah. He grew up in a really vicious, violent household.
Right.
And so we talked about, and this was also something that if you come to, get to know athletes, is that they're very much like artists in that they're very sensitive. So
right.
We had that shared language.
I love that.
Yeah. Michael is a really beautiful, beautiful human being. He's the first, if anybody wants to check out Losers, he's the first episode of the series.
On Netflix.
Yeah.
And everybody should. One last question. We've got 10 seconds. What's the last piece of art you saw that brought you to tears?
Oh, it's Robot Dreams, the independent animated feature. You got to see Robot Dreams.
All right, good. We'll check it out. Mickey Duzyj, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a happy Friday and a wonderful weekend. Thanks to Jen Hammoud and Matt Rosenberg and the Epicurean for hosting the Nook here in their beautiful, fabulous store.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah,
Thank you,
TGIF, Miller time.
Yeah, baby.